With the release of Dynasty, we saw an add-on mechanic for our ranger arrows in the form of aim counters. Now out of the gate, aim as a mechanic largely missed the bullseye. But a lot has changed since then. Outsiders brought in ease and consistency, and the Azalea and Riptide 2 Armory deck leaned hard into aim support. Yet, aim as a mechanic was completely absent from High Seas, despite including several strong new Ranger class tools, and then again, completely absent from Compendium of Rathe. So what exactly is the state of aim in today's game? A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. The aim counter mechanic has had a fascinating journey in Flesh and Blood. A journey that may have to stay on pause, perhaps until Mastery Pack Ranger, or perhaps the next Azalea. See, what began as a clunky and inconsistent mechanic in Dynasty was refined and bolstered into a more potent tool in Outsiders. But with High Seas was yet again put aside, and with no support in Pen, the set that supported all the heroes, it's pretty safe to start to question the future of the mechanic. The aim counter mechanic at its core is a conditional trigger for Ranger arrows. An arrow with an aim counter on it gains a bonus effect, which can range from a simple power boost to game-warping pieces of disruption. But in the case of arrows like Drill Shot and Infecting Shot, an aim counter simply enhances the power of the arrow. Drill Shot is a very decent arrow, threatening a -1 counter on an equipment. This often pulls out equipment blocks, with the theory that you'd get the counter anyways, so may as well avoid the damage. But with an aim counter, it gains piercing, making it punishing with respect to those equipment blocks. Infecting Shot has become a staple arrow, a 1/5 arrow on the red that threatens a blood rot on hit. An aim counter pushes the attack to 6, becoming even more threatening. An effective 2/6, assuming of course the going rate of 1 resource for an aim. In both of these cases, the arrows functionally work the same, whether an aim counter is there or not, and they are simply enhanced by an aim counter. Conversely, arrows like a Mobilizing Shot and Barbed Undertow can deliver crippling, disruptive effects on hit with the presence of an aim counter, but without one, they're effectively blank. For this reason, arrows like Drill Shot and Infecting Shot see tons of meta play, whereas Immobilizing and Barbed rarely do. Initially, aim counters were seen as an extension of the Azalea Go Tall type mechanic, a way to make one big, dominated arrow more devastating. Headed into the Dynasty release, I dropped a video that called into question the viability of the then new aim mechanic, because at the time, it did largely miss the mark. Dynasty offered some interesting and enticing cards like Hemorrhage Bore and Deadeye, but many other cards were just functionally not worth the extra steps required of the aim counter. Longshot is one such example, a 0/3 arrow on the red that gets +2 attack with an aim counter. Not only is this just bad, it's straight awful. Even compared to one of the OG arrows, Headshot, which functionally gets the same effect for simply loading in with a bow. And if we put Longshot alongside of a new arrow from High Seas and Dry Powder Shot, forget about it. Now look, in all fairness, below rate cards like this are perfectly common within a draftable set. But remember, Dynasty was a supplemental set, not draftable, and as such, the release of a card like Longshot in that environment means it will never see play. While in theory, the Dynasty era aim mechanic made arrows more powerful, the upside wasn't really worth the extra difficulty. Now, in that same video, I also noted that we had to consider that Dynasty was setting the base for more to come, which it did. Because in March of 2023 came Outsiders, a Ranger-heavy set buffing Azalea and introducing Riptide. And with it, a follow-up video discussing how aim now looked a lot better, having become both easier and more consistent. See, with the release of Outsiders, 2 important things happened. One was the release of Azalea's Crow's Nest Quiver, which made imparting aim counters onto her arrow an effective use of any extra resources, fitting into her existing big arrow strategy. But also, and perhaps more importantly, a wide range of arrows that were functionally good on their own, and simply were enhanced by having an aim counter. With Outsiders, the aim mechanic became as simple as pumping an arrow, and became both repeatable and more consistent. aim became a true add-on bonus rather than a central mechanic. No longer was the concept of aim counters applied to cards like Longshot, but rather cards like Infecting Shot. Significant difference in playability, as you didn't have to sacrifice opportunity. And then, in the summer of 2004, came additional support. There's been a long-standing joke on this channel about the Azalea and Riptide 2 Armory deck, but that joke is rooted in reality. While the original Ranger hero, Azalea Ace in the Hole, was the hero most associated with the aim mechanic due in no small part to her Crow's Nest quiver, Riptide has really emerged as the hero currently best positioned to utilize aim counters. The combo line of 2 cards from that Armory deck, Line It Up and Stone Rain, is a perfect setup with Riptide's ability. Playing Line It Up allows Riptide to put Stone Rain face down into Arsenal, a trigger that happens prior to Line It Up resolving, which means that, on resolution, Stone Rain can be turned face up to gain the aim counter, imparting Dominate. With the +3 buff, this turns Stone Rain into a formidable 7 Dominate arrow with a significantly impactful on hit. Riptide's ability to use aim as a supplemental tool, enhancing his typically more grindy gameplay style, which leans into free reloads and defensive traps, seems like an ideal spot for the aim mechanic to land, at least as it exists today. Aim is not yet in a spot where it can be run as a standalone mechanic. The upside on cards like Barbed Undertow and Immobilizing Shot just, right now, aren't worth the risk of having to send them as plain on-curve attacks. There are too many better options that are more fungible. But playing aim as an enhancement mechanic, and perhaps even leaning into some of the absolutely vicious on-hits from some of the more decent pump cards like Deadeye, which even in a vacuum is still a 1/3 yellow pump, seems like a pretty decent place for the mechanic. However, the fact that the most recent Ranger-focused set, High Seas, ignored the aim mechanic entirely is very interesting, and is perhaps a strong indicator of the mechanic's current place in the game's design. Instead of being a core focus of a Ranger deck type archetype, aim counters have been relegated to a powerful but supplemental add-on mechanic. They are a tool in Ranger's quiver, a way to enhance specific cards and apply pressure rather than being the central focus of a deck's plan. And this isn't necessarily a negative. It allows for a more flexible and adaptable Ranger class, where aim can be included as the meta ebbs and flows. It's very likely that the aim mechanic will continue in this supplementary role, getting occasional support on new cards, but not being the central theme of an archetype. Perhaps one day, an aim-focused hero could emerge, enabling it as a primary mechanic. The next iteration of Azalea, well, perhaps. It does seem quite plausible, assuming of course they desire to stay in the Big Arrow Azalea type swim lane with her. Personally, I'm partial to the design that I used for the Dice Commando Team 2025 New Year's Day tournament, the custom hero, Amy. Essentially, Riptide's castaway bow ability on a hero. She was very fun, leaning into reload pumps and aim counter tricks, and she wasn't super strong, at least with the card pool at the time. But while I digress a little, in all honesty though, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Azalea's next iteration did go very hard into aim. Perhaps then, aim could become a dominant disruptive strategy. But until that happens, the extra steps required of aim will likely relegate it to being a potent but situational arrow in Ranger's quiver. So let me know in the comments what you think about aim. Was it being suspiciously absent from High Seas a sign? And was it shunned from Compendium a nail in the coffin? Or what should the new Azalea do? Let me know below, and go Commando.